3, 2, 1. Hi everyone, and welcome to week 2. This is so fast. I'm not used to the quarter system, so it kind of goes fast for me. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of week 1 and were able to understand the assignments and everything. As you may have seen, week 2 looks enormous, but it's not as bad as you would think. And I just want to kind of go over all of the things that are expected of you during this week. And in addition, I want to give you some more resources about BEAM that you can use to sort of work on your own assignment. So today, what I'm going to talk about for week 2 is this idea of ethos, which is the first thing that I want you to look at if you look at the module. I want to talk a little bit about integrating sources. So what is integrating sources? I want to give you a lot more information on BEAM, including 2 examples of past BEAM projects so that you can see what they look like. And then I want to just show you a little bit about APA citation. And I just want you to note that you don't really need to know this now. This is something that you just kind of need to skim and then really look at it much more in depth later. So first, for your ethos assignment, if you go to the module, okay, so if you go to the module, if we go to week 2, you'll see that the very first thing that you're going to do after you review the overview is this ethos and rhetoric in writing, okay? So, and it says here, there's the integrating sources page that we can go to later. But first, what I really want you to do is look at this idea of ethos. Okay, so this is a website. There's a link here, and it has different examples of ethos. And if you don't like the examples given on the website, I've also provided simpler examples here. So here you can see cat-related examples because I have a cat. I'm kind of a crazy cat lady. So I gave a bunch of different examples of cats. But really what I want you to take away from this is that ethos is how an author convinces you that they are trustworthy and correct. So the ethos is kind of like the persuasive technique so that you believe the author. Okay, that's what ethos is. And I want you to read this before you complete your discussion. There's a reason that I put it first. You need to read this before you do your discussion because you need this information for your discussion. After you do that and you do your discussion initial post, I have another page here that's called Integrating Sources, which has a PowerPoint that sort of teaches you how to integrate sources in academic writing. I'm including this, number 1, just to teach you about this because it's an important thing you need to learn about, but really for your upcoming BEAM assignment because this is something that you're going to do with BEAM. So what it is it's a PowerPoint that you'll download. I recommend that you take about 30 minutes and you treat this like an assignment where you're just going to practice doing a little bit of source integration. It's not an assignment that you need to submit, but I do recommend that you do some practice with it. If you want my feedback on it, you can always email me and just ask me, hey, professor, I did this as an example. Can you just look at it for me? And I can look at it and give you some feedback on whether you're on the right track or whether I want you to try something else. So the big thing I want to focus on for the rest of this PowerPoint is BEAM, because I'm sure you're all very confused. You've probably read a lot of information about it, and you're like, how am I supposed to do this? So I want to show you a little bit more about what BEAM is, show you a few examples of each idea, and then show you 2 student projects so you can really get a good idea of what BEAM is. So if you read the article last week, Bizup talks about the 4 strategies for using sources. Using it as background, using it as an exhibit, using it as an argument, and using it as method. So if you saw, there is a link to this page on Canvas. Hopefully you've seen it. This is the Indiana page. I think I gave a link to it last week, and I have a link to it this week again as well. But this shows you sort of what each thing really is. So background is general information or factual evidence. So For example, an encyclopedia article, a dictionary definition. You're just providing facts and you're giving context. An exhibit or evidence is when you're analyzing something, you're interpreting something, or you're giving evidence. So, for example, if you find a scientific paper talking about something, that's an example of evidence. You can also use a source as an argument. So, a scholarly article or an opinion piece, and you can do a couple things with an argument. You can agree with what they say, or you can disagree with what they say, or you can extend it, or you can sort of change parts of the argument. And then finally, we also have methods. So this is kind of like the first article that you read for reading, which teaches you how to be an active reader. So a lot of you chose the first one, which talks a little bit about reading like a writer. So that would be an example of method where you're learning about new terminology and concepts and you're using that source to sort of adapt what they talk about. So what I have put here, and I'm going to download this PowerPoint so you have these links as well. So if you look here, I have 2 links. These are actually the same link, but there are several things on this document. So what you can do is basically you're going to click on this link and it will take you to this Google Doc, okay? And notice here's the same thing I just showed you a minute ago. And this kind of shows you some examples of BEAM as small examples. So I have here this background. So this is an example of a student analyzing something for background, okay? The 4 sentences contained as litigation, adjudicative, jurisdiction, and identifiers, and the last sentence, 23 words long, included 2 semicolons, right? So notice how this has information on the background, okay? This is an example of exhibit, okay? So this is an example of an exhibit, and it has the source here at the bottom, okay? We also have argument here. Here's another example of argument with a sample, with the link here. And then we have method, again, with the sample here. So notice that there are 4 different examples here, 1 of each. The other thing that this link has is you can kind of practice doing a little bit with BEAM integration and strategy and identification. So if you go down, it'll say your turn to label. You can ignore this where it says in your breakout room because we're not meeting on Zoom and going over this. This is just something you can do on your own. But what you can actually do is try to find the background, exhibit, argument, or method on this source. Okay, so they're talking about a letter to multilingual students. You can read through the source and you can see if you can find examples of those things. Okay? So this is if you want to practice. And again, just like the integrating sources page, if you want to send me this, if you want to just send me and say, hey, professor, am I right? Am I close? What do you think? Is this correct? You can absolutely do that. So I'm here for you. If you want to ask me quick questions about whether you understand the concept right, I am 100% here for that. So just note, I've given you the links on here so you can access that. The other thing is I want to talk a little bit about this idea of a curated collection, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples. So the first question is, why are you having us do this? Why are you having us pick examples from pieces and talking about them? Well, according to Jennifer Gonzalez, curation projects have the potential to put our students to work on 3 different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So you're being forced to understand something and then analyze it and then evaluate it. So you're going to show me that you understand, show me why it is an example of this thing, and then tell me if it's effective or if it's not effective, right? You're going to show me, yes, this was a really good example, or it's not a great example, and they could have improved it in these ways. So now I want to go over a couple of these curated collection examples so that you can see what we're asking for. So the idea is that you, number 1, choose a BEAM strategy. You find samples of it in action from the set course readings. You'll have about 10 of them when this assignment is due, so you have 10 readings to choose from. And you're going to make a collection of 4 different samples with explanations of how it is the strategy in action. And then you're going to introduce this whole thing with what's called a rationale, telling me why you chose this and why you put this collection together. So let me show you 2 different examples of this. The first one is this one here by a student. And so if you look at the first page, they have this rationale here, okay? It says, when evaluating a source, the beam model for analyzing rhetorical use of sources can help us identify its rhetorical function. So they give a little background on what is beam. And then they explain, in my collection, I chose 2 different genres read in this course, such as a journalism style genre, blah, blah, blah. If you want to read this whole thing, you can pause the video for a moment and read it, but I don't want to spend too much time going over it. But you can see clearly that they give background on what beam is and why they chose these 4 articles. So if I go up, you can actually click on each article. Sample 1, Nikki Graff. And here they have, this is the sample from the article. So you can see this is the quote, it tells you where it is, it tells you the name of the article, etc. Then it says, why does this show background? So they're showing me, why does this show the idea of background? And if you go to the next one, this is a different sample. Again, we have the quote, and it explains why this is an example of background. You can go then to this one, and then it's another example of background, and the last one is a different example of background. So notice you don't have to do B, E, A, and M. You only have to choose one of them. So this is one example of how this student formatted it. Another way you can do it is by putting them all together. So this is another student who has their own rationale here. So you can see these are the articles that they used. Again, if you want to read this more, you can pause the video and read it. And then here, notice they just put it all together. Here's the sample and here's the analysis right next to each other. Here's the sample, here's the analysis, here's the sample, here's the analysis, here's the sample, here's the analysis. So notice that this student is focusing on the idea of exhibits. So it says, I like to read articles that are logical and rational, so I choose exhibits. So these are 4 examples of exhibits. So you saw 4 examples of background, and now these are 4 examples of exhibits. You could also do analysis or methods if you want to, argument or method if you want to. It's your choice of what you want to choose. Method is a little bit challenging to do, but you can still do it. Okay, so these are just some more pictures that show you the examples that have been included here. So ultimately, after you do the BEAM project, the idea is you're going to feel more confident as a writer. You're going to read and annotate more efficiently and more quickly. You're going to be more purposeful and varied when you choose sources. You're going to recognize BEAM sources as being transferable, which means using them for more than one purpose. And you're going to be able to synthesize sources much more easily. So the last thing I want to just address really quickly is the APA citation, which is the last section of this module. So when you do APA citation, the idea is I just want you to skim this section, skim the websites, and just make sure you understand the basics of citation. I really recommend that you bookmark those websites or you save them so that when you do your BEAM assignment, you will feel more comfortable using APA. But for now, you don't need to really understand APA in full. So what I recommend for you to do is when you go to the modules, as always, we're going to go to week 2. You're going to start with this overview, right? You're going to check your understanding of the project. And the last thing I want to just address is I've put up a survey sometime that I want you to answer sometime before this Tuesday, because I would love to have our first synchronous Zoom meeting. So all you have to do, it's very easy. I want you to tell me all of the times that you're available to have this meeting. So for example, on Tuesday, if you're available all of these times, go ahead and click all of them. If you're available only sometimes, click the ones that you're available, okay? If you can't do Tuesday, just say none of these times work for me and move on. Remember, this is Pacific Standard Time, so make sure that that is okay in your time zone, and then tell me what times you're available. All right. As always, if you guys have any questions, please just send me an email and come to my office hours or make a meeting with me on Calendly. You do have your normal discussion, response, and revisit this week. They were so much fun to read. It was really great to see what you guys had to say. Keep up the good work. And yeah, I look forward to getting to know you more over the course of this quarter.